Hey guys, what's up? This is Merton, and welcome to my first ever album review. Well, technically, it's not my first, since I already did a full video about Aborted's latest album, Vault of Horrors, sometime last year, but that's besides the point. I want to do this in more like a traditional review, and what better way to start things off than with Whitechapel's latest album, Hymns and Dissonance. This album comes out on March 7th on Metal Blade Records. This band formed in 2006 in Knoxville, Tennessee. They are a deathcore band. They may not be one of the OGs of deathcore, but they are definitely a household name. Forgive the absolutely terrible pun right there if you know some of the members. Anyways, the lineup consists of Phil Bozeman on vocals, guitarists Alex Wade, Ben Savage, and Zach Householder. Zach also did the engineering and production for this album. On bass, we have Gabe Crisp and new member Brandon Zaki, who previously played with Enterprise Earth, on drums. Now, what they wanted to do with this album is that they didn't want to do a continuation of the previous two albums, The Valley and Ken. And despite those two albums having a little bit of a mixed reception because of the introduction of, well, more or less a continuation, I should say, of clean vocals from Phil, I actually do like those two albums quite a bit. But this album, I'll just say it right now, there are no clean vocals anywhere. There's not even like a little clean refrain to be found on this album. There is nothing clean about this album, period. Even Alex has come out and said that there is nothing pretty about this album. This album is just drenched in darkness, despair, misery, hopelessness, any negative word you could use to describe the overall atmosphere of this album. You could definitely use that. In fact, I'd probably say this is definitely their most darkest, most dismal album in their entire catalog. Now, I will say, for the longest time, I've had This Is Exile as one of, if not my all-time favorite Whitechapel records. But I will say, after listening to this album a couple times, This Is Exile has definitely got some pretty fierce competition here. Of course, it doesn't help that this album was slated to be a spiritual successor to This Is Exile, especially in terms of the overall concept. Now, getting into that, this album tells the tale of this one guy who wants to become a cult leader and amass this group of followers to carry out some of the most evil, vicious, most heinous acts unimaginable. And a vast majority of this album represents the 7 deadly sins, and we're getting into that with Prisoner 666, which is kind of like the prologue to this whole album. Again, you got this guy who decides, he's renouncing his faith. He's pretty much said, you know what, fuck you, I'm gonna go do evil shit, and that's pretty much what that song sets up right there. And then getting into the title track, Hymns and Dissonance, you see this cult follower, this cult leader, I should say, amasses a group of followers, carrying out all these evil deeds in the hopes to open a portal to meet this great evil figure or something other. But yeah, that was one of the singles that came out for this album. If you guys want to know my thoughts on that, I did have I do have a video where I did a full reaction to that song. You'll pretty much know what my stance is on that song, and by proxy this whole album here, if you go and check that out. So moving on the track list, we have Diabolic Slumber, and this begins the set of 7 deadly sins, with this song representing sloth. Now, basically, some of the lyrics in this song, I think one of the opening lines is something about, people being hung by their necks, and this guy's just standing there just watching it all happen. He's not even going to intervene, not even going to try to save them. He's just basically seeing all this evil shit go down, and he's just like, I'm just going to go over there. I'm not going to butt in, I'm not going to intervene, I'm just going to let it all ride out. And then we get into A Visceral Wretch, which that song represents the sin of gluttony. And I mean, we kind of figured that much just reading the lyrics to that song. And Phil, who actually did a live stream of this album not too long ago, breaking down all the the lyrical concepts and who wrote what riffs for the songs. He basically said that the whole point of a visceral wretch is that this cult leader pins people against each other, and it's not a case of okay, we're just gonna take two random dudes and just have them fight it out to see who's more deserving of of my well, who's more deserving of being a follower. Instead, he pits loved ones against each other and gives them an ultimatum, or rather a bit of a catch-22, in that you either kill the one that you love so much and you eat their flesh, and you will then have the right to serve, or you can eat this big pile of shit that comes from all these demons over here. So it's a no-win situation, but you gotta do what you gotta do in order to survive. It's still pretty fucked up with that whole situation there. Then getting into the interlude track, Ex Infernus, which believe it or not, those throat vocals going on throughout that whole interlude, that's not Phil. I think Zach actually composed this whole song. I mean, I don't know who he got to do those throat vocals, or what he used to get those, but that interlude sets up, or rather continues the sort of dark, dreary sounding atmosphere, and it really sets up the next song. The next song being Hate Cult Ritual, which that song embodies the sin of wrath, and it's very, very fitting. This is the fastest song on the album. It's thrashy, it's brutal, it's relentless, it's exhausting as hell, and it's always meant to be that way. I mean, you can just see it right now, the way those two songs line up. Ex Infernus is got this sort of dark tribal thing going on, and towards the end of it, you see this mass of people just coming over the hill. And then by the time Hate Cult Ritual kicks off, everybody's charging down that hill looking to fuck something up. And I think it's a pretty good way to describe those two right there. And moving on to the Abysmal Gospel, this song represents the sin of pride. And I think Phil said it himself that of all the songs on this album that he'd try to write lyrics for, that was probably one of, if not the hardest ones to write, because Phil, he said that he's never really saw himself as a as a narcissist, or someone who thinks he's all that in a bag of chips. He says he's more of a really humble kind of guy. So it was really hard for him to get in that kind of headspace on portraying that kind of character who's pretty much says, you know what, I'm the greatest thing that there ever is. All shall bow down before me. But I know in my one video where I reacted to the title track, I was looking through the track list, and I think I said something along the lines of assuming that Abysmal Gospel, going by the name alone, might be one of the doomiest songs on the album. And I kind of believed it for a little bit until they switched it up on us. Yeah, the song is a little bit of a bait and switch, but it's not that, but don't take that in the wrong way. It's a very, very welcome bait and switch. You start off with this just drenched in HM2 sort of bloodbath, entombed kind of riffing. Just it's very slow, very heavy, very sludgy sounding, and then it does a complete 180 and just kicks it up to like 88 miles an hour and just goes full on fucking thrash, and I absolutely love it. But not as much as I love the next song, Bedlam, which is one of my all-time favorites on this album, and one of my all-time favorite Whitechapel songs ever. This has got to be one of the grooviest fucking things that I've heard this band put out in a long time. This song embodies the sin of envy. And I think Phil mentioned in the lyrics, or the whole concept behind this song, is that this cult leader was looking ahead at his brother, which is actually Damon from from This Is Exile. Yeah, just looking at his corpse just laying there, and he just pretty much looks at him, just starts fucking around with them, defiling it and whatnot. Saying that aha, I'm the one that's next in line. You're fucking nothing. Just does all this stuff to him, but Damon is just laying there, sort of dead, but at the same time, not really. He just can't move. He can't say anything. He can't react. He's just sitting. He's just laying there motionless, with his eyes wide open, just seeing all this stuff happen to him. Getting his bones broken off, his skin peeled away. Man, speaking of skin peeled away, I'd say my favorite section on that song is about, I'd say 29 seconds in, where you just get probably one of the grooviest, simplest but grooviest sounding riffs in this whole album. And Phil is spitting like a madman on the on that song right there. But yeah, that's a heavy fucking song right there, if you ask me. Moving on to Mammoth God, this song represents the sin of greed, and I also assumed that this one was going to be another really, really doomy song, but I mean, I can admit when I'm wrong. It's just a straightforward banger of a song, just typical Whitechapel goodness. I think the lyrics, as Phil described it, this guy, I mean, I don't think the song can be described as okay, so I'm this guy that's running around just trying to take all these riches and hoard them, just keep all this stuff myself. No, it's more of I'm gonna kill all these gods. I declare myself as a god, and yeah, I've taken the heads of the other gods, so there's nothing left. So I'm just gonna go take my own. At least that's how I figured that whole thing right over there. But yeah, that's a really, really fun song. And then we get into the final song, which is another one of my all-time favorites for this album. Nothing is coming for any of us. And this song represents the sin of lust. Now, during that same live stream, Phil had mentioned that this is probably one of the weirdest, most fucked up things that he's written for this album, especially with the kind of subject material in the song. I mean, I'll just say that I think people have become a little bit more sensitive to this kind of stuff. So the long and short of this song is that this cult leader, had his way with Mother Earth, and he's looking to have his offspring carry out his dark legacy, if you will. So he gets in there and he finds the child, but it turns out that the child is not what he was looking for. It was not made in his image, so to speak. So realizing that, he starts losing his shit, and then he ultimately removes the child, in a manner of speaking. By which point, everything goes to shit. I mean, yeah, I know all the evil stuff going on in the background, fires raging, people dying left and right, but this guy, seeing, what it was that was birth, not being what it was that he was wanting, the walls of reality start crumbling around him. He starts losing it, just saying that, none of this is real, nothing is coming for any of us, nothing's coming for you, so on and so forth. To the point where he finds himself in this empty void of nothingness. And I think the best way I can describe this song is, think of Cal Decapitation's last two album closers, Death Atlas and Just Another Body. Though I'm kind of leaning a little bit more towards Death Atlas, where the whole song is the epic album closer. I mean, granted, this song right here isn't 10 minutes long. It's just, I mean, it is the longest song in the album, just a little over 6 minutes, but it's sort of got that same setup where, you just got these pummeling sounding riffs, you got this heavy ass breakdown in the middle, which might be one of the heaviest fucking things that I've heard on this album by far, especially when they halftime that breakdown. Oh god, it's so good. But the other part of the song, it kind of leans, it kind of pulls back on the brutality just a bit, and it gets a lot more melodic. But I can describe this as both sounding just absolutely beautiful, but at the same time just very hopeless. I mean, I love that little lead section. Well, little lead. I love that big lead section carrying out the other half of this song right over here. It's I mean, it's not like super super shreddy, but it definitely does have that sort of melodic line of beauty and despair, all at the same time. But yeah. What else can I really say about this album? I mean, the production on this one is really really good. This is actually the very first one that that they've done on their own. They haven't. Well, I think they've had a little bit of outside help, but I know with their past few albums, they usually they do get a little bit of outside help here and there. I think Mark Lewis did a bunch of their previous albums, but I think this is the first one that they've done all by themselves. So yeah, the way that this album sounds, they pretty much knew what they wanted this album to sound like. And I think they've nailed it. The guitar tones sound just absolutely crushing. That's probably the crunchiest, most vicious sounding guitar tones that I've ever heard on a Whitechapel album. And I mean, I could say that definitely beats out the tones that I heard on This Is Exile and A New Era of Corruption. Which I mean, I love the guitar tones on both those albums, especially Era of Corruption. Yeah, Phil, I'd say that this is probably one of his most um one of his best performances, if not his best performance on this album. Just because, well, I mean, Phil is doing what he does best. He does, his absolutely insane deathcore vocals, but he does throw in some very interesting wrinkles this time around. With some songs like the end of Prisoner 666, the little midsection to Hymns and Dissonance, and even what is it? Not Diabolic Slumber. Hate Cult Ritual. He does backwards vocals like Prisoner 666. You got Retefo Seal, Retefo Etsiba, Weimak, Morph Waleb, Nopen Rio Ca Nick Rifical, Red Rum Metla. I know that sounds absolutely terrible when I tried saying it backwards, but trust me, that's exactly how it was that he said it on the recordings. He didn't just speak the lines normally and then just backmask it. No, he legit said this shit backwards. Hymns and Dissonance, you also get Natas, Iratef, Itab Suni Rufus, Natas, Iratef, Itab Suni Rufus. Man, I almost had that same flow going. It just sounded a lot more boring. I mean, when I say it, or even that line in Hate Cult Ritual, pretty early on. Ref et reps for refico tihlas exrep tihlas elmerk it's swal for isiderap. Yeah, I know I'm getting a little bit of a tongue twister here, but yeah, I think those are the only songs on this album that he does the whole backwards vocals thing, and I think that it's probably one of the most interesting wrinkles on this album, and it's a very very welcome one at that, especially when this album is calling for some of the most darkest, evilest shit unimaginable. Yeah, this album definitely delivers and then some. I think that this album is the sound of a band that's just firing on all cylinders. There is not a single dull moment on this record at all. So much so that I'm willing, well, I have no problem saying that this album is deserving a 5 out of 5 rating from me. This may very well be one of, if not the best albums in the entire catalog. If you think so, then hey, by all means, go snag you a copy of the album on Bandcamp or Indie Merch Store or directly from the band themselves. Go check them out on tour. I know they got a big Hymns and Dissonance tour coming up pretty soon. I think Alluvial, Brand of Sacrifice, and 200 Stab Wounds is on that tour. So go check them out. Go check this album out. I know you guys are gonna love it, especially if you're a big fan of deathcore like I am. If you're afraid that, no, actually, I think the best way I can, say this is that I feel like that with this album, Whitechapel took a good look at a lot of deathcore bands that has come out over the past several years, and pretty much said, "Nah, I'd win." I think that's probably the best way I can really describe that. So yeah, thanks for checking this little review out, and hope you guys enjoyed the album just as much as I do. And until then, I'll see you guys later.